Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee of October the 6th, 2020. I'll call this meeting to order. It is somewhat historical because this is the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee meeting on Zoom for the first time. So as we go forward tonight, I'd like to remind everybody that as a committee, this is the first time we've done a Zoom video meeting. So we're going to make a few mistakes along the way, but please forgive us for our mistakes. I have called the meeting to order. I'd like to recognize a few people in the audience that I see tonight. Our mayor is in the audience. I see our CAO is here too. I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Vane, and I saw Councillor Cadwell, but I don't see his, oh, there it is. Yes, his name is here too. Yes, all waving. And I'd like to give a big hello to our planning director, Antonetta, who is here for our first advisory committee meeting. And we're excited to have her on board. And she will be speaking to us later in the meeting, specifically on item number 6. Everybody has an agenda on the committee, so we'll proceed. Are there any disclosures of interest? Seeing none. I've sort of done the introduction already. Unless the committee would like to introduce themselves so that the audience, because we are live streaming, and this is the first time that we've been able to live stream our committee meeting. So I think we've probably got a pretty good audience. I'm hoping we do anyhow. So Olia, would you like to say hello to everybody? And then Kate, and do we have Anne Braybank too?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Hi, Anne.
So hello to the committee. My name is Olia Jurychuk, and I'm a volunteer citizen committee member.
Thank you. And Kate? Let's see if you can unmute yourself. And you with us, Kate?
Hi, my name's Kate Giroux. I'm also a citizen of the Heritage Advisory, and this is my first term.
Thank you, Kate. So everybody's got a feel for unmuting themselves and speaking. That's great.
Hi, I'm Anne Brabant. I'm the vice chair, the assistant chair, but I'm also just a citizen member as well.
So the first.
Should I introduce myself?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Bothwell. Well, go ahead. Yes, sorry.
That's okay. I'm Councillor Bothwell, Ward 4, and I'm also a representative appointed by council on the Heritage Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. And I'd like to recognize that we have the minutes of our meeting of March the 3rd that we would like to receive. I need a first and seconder to receive the minutes of March the 3rd, 2020.
I will.
Anne?
Yeah.
And a seconder? Councillor Bothwell, thank you. All in favor? Carried. There we go. Can we go into our updates now? I think I'll turn it over to Bianca, who is going to give us a verbal update on a number of properties on that agenda that we have. Go ahead, Bianca.
Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. We have a little PowerPoint. Okay, so here's the first property here at 35 Main Street West. And I just have a little update on this one. The committee has seen it and provided their comments. And the proposal was to turn a window into a door. There would be some removal of heritage fabric, and that's why it was brought before the committee. As you can see in the top corner there, that is the window that's going to be turned into the door. Just below, there's a sketch of it. And all your comments will be brought forward to council. And we will note, received the comment about potentially designating the structure in the future. And we will add that to the list. And of course, that'll be against the 906 criteria through the Ontario regulation. So that's for that one there. And we are preparing a list of properties that need to be evaluated. So this is the next property here. So this is 262 Main Street West. The property was recently purchased by a homeowner, and they are completely dedicated to the restoration of the home and are doing quite a lovely job inside. You can see over here in the window, they've already started the plaster repair, and it's looking absolutely gorgeous inside. And they're really taking the care to make sure it's being done properly. And with that being said, we have had the applicants reach out about doing some maintenance work. And I just wanted to give you an update on what the maintenance work will be. So over here, you can see that a window is boarded up that was unfortunately damaged during the changeover of the house. And the restoration work on the window is being done. They do have a lot of the original material, and they are sourcing the glass for a period correct. And that's what's happening there. And then throughout the structure, they will be doing some maintenance work on the windows, which will include reputtying with a linseed putty and replacing again with the period correct glass. And I have talked to the applicant and the conservator, and we've agreed if any sash becomes unviable, they will contact us for consultation. And then down here, you can see the brickwork is severely damaged due to the use of concrete mortars. So they're going to be having a conservator come in, remove those concrete mortars and do some repointing in these very damaged areas. And then in some cases, the brick will need to be replaced. And in heritage buildings, you want to make sure that the material you're replacing with is in kind. These are quite soft bricks, and we don't want a hard material above or around it because that'll cause damage. And actually the historic nature of the home, and you can see it in this picture here, is actually a finish that gives it strength. So they're going to try and keep as many of the original bricks and apply this surface. It's actually called Humitate. And so that's what's going to be happening there. And then they are installing these non-intrusive glass and epoxy around the cracks. And this will just basically give us an idea if the building is continually moving, and they will be bringing in a structural engineer, but we have put in those for the time being. We'll move on to 352. If you guys have any questions at any time, just put your hand up. So for this property here, this is, we've already seen it in the Heritage Committee meetings, and it was a permit for this house here, which is adjacent to, or actually directly next to the Heritage Home Maplehurst, designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, sorry, Part 4, the Heritage Act. And originally they were hoping to keep the original home at the back and then put an addition on the front. And they proposed the roof being removed. During construction, the walls were determined to be unviable. So they had to go right down to the existing foundation, and then they put on, then they will be putting on the new dwelling. We did assess the impacts, the additional impacts from the removal of the exterior walls. Our main concerns continued to be the vibrations on the heritage home, especially the slate roof. So that was mediated in town hall. We have an update on the Grimsby Beach study. I just put these pictures on here. You can see the original Grimsby Beach campground when there was just the tents, and then the Grimsby Beach in the 90s. So just an update, we have selected, council has selected the consultant, which is MHBC, and we have had our project kickoff, and we've started transferring over materials, which includes historic photographs, etc. And we will now be selecting the steering committee, and we're hoping to discuss that tonight. Staff thought that Kate Charo would be a great selection from the Heritage Committee, as she's a member of both the Heritage Committee and a significant member of the community. And that's something we can definitely talk about. And then we will, in the coming weeks, be setting up a walking tour of Grimsby Beach, which we would like the committee to be a part of. And the last update is on 493 Ridge Road West. And this is on the minor variance application, and it was to take a partial amount of the garage off and put on a new addition to the garage. And the Heritage Committee mentioned that they would like to see this property designated. So we will be adding it to the list of properties to be evaluated against the Ontario Regulation 906.
Let's do questions on that.
Yeah, sure.
Can you unshare your screen so that I think we can go back to
Yeah.
see? And hard
Sorry.
to raise your hand to comment when we can't.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to do this with we've got the screen showing the slides, which is great, but we're in the side panel. So if the chair can see us, I think, because we can't raise our hand.
Yeah.
Oh, with the-
Well,
Sorry about
there
that.
we go.
Yeah.
Yep, we can see everybody now. Okay. Any questions to Bianca about our update? No questions. The steering committee, did we want to talk about that?
Sorry, yeah,
Oh, you've got your hand up, Councillor Bothwell?
thank
Go
you.
ahead.
And I don't know if the rest of the committee know if they have questions. Do you want us to use raise hand, or is that the best way, Chair?
Yeah, that would be the best. I've just got to get in the habit of looking, don't I? Yeah, which I should be able to, yeah.
So I just think, so we've covered, Bianca, thank you very much. You've covered quite a few updates very quickly on some significant things that are going on in town. With respect to the restoration work that's going on with 262 Main Street West, Nixon Hall, you've mentioned a bunch of extensive restoration that it appears the tenant or the owners are now doing on that building. Are we going to be, as a committee, seeing the recommendations on the work? And because normally when it's significant, isn't it supposed to come to the committee for us to review the types of works on a designated property?
Sure, I can answer those questions. So all of the work that they are proposing is all maintenance at this point. The entire structure won't be repointed until the spring. That's a much larger job. At this point, there's just some substantial damage on the back addition, and they're hoping to take out some of the concrete mortar as it's doing quite a substantial amount of damage. And the bricks that are missing, they're going to be putting in sourced heritage bricks that is compatible.
And thank you. And you didn't mention anything about the butternut trees on the property and the extensive clear cutting that was done on the property. And the arborist peer review on that. Have we got any updates on the trees, and were any taken down during the clear cutting that were butternuts?
Sure, I can talk on that. I just wanted to note with the repointing, we will be following up with the heritage permit for that.
Thank you.
And for the trees, I have gone on site and taken a look at the trees. There is markers on the existing butternut trees, and I've taken pictures for our documentation of where they are. And for The ones that have been removed, the stumps have been gone. We can't identify which ones were the butternut, but we are in contact with the Ministry of Forest, and they have said to us basically what what we need to enforce, and we're following up with them, and we're still in contact. But as for the ones that are there, they need to be retained and protected.
So is there any way you can share the arborist report on like, I'm assuming it was done after the pre-consultation agreement where they said they should have an arborist report, and then the trees went down before the arborist report. So I'm assuming that it was done recently, and so therefore they couldn't capture the existing trees that were on the property. Is that right?
Yeah, so I have been in contact about the arborist report, and it's something we're actually still waiting on, but they have let us know that all the trees have been cataloged, and well, the existing ones, and we're waiting for that information still. So once we have that, we will circulate that for sure.
Thank you. It's just a shame that they went ahead and took all the trees down, so we couldn't verify if there were baby butternuts, and those are the mamas that are left, but
yeah, absolutely. And I'll just note with that the homeowner that's in there now, she's very dedicated to the home, and she actually came after that had happened, and so she's definitely planning to do some replanting on the site.
Great. The 493 Ridge Road, the Committee of Adjustment minor variance, when it went to it, it kind of came as a surprise to Heritage Committee members because we hadn't been advised that an addition was going to be going through them. So is there a way that we can kind of be kept on the radar when these things go and we can actually have input into them like we did with the home hardware one? I just think, I don't think we saw anything on the Ridge Road garage addition just because it is attached to the house. From what I
Yeah, sure.
So the home hardware building, their building permit was submitted, so we haven't yet received the building permit for the Ridge Road property.
You're muted.
No, John, I think it's because you're on.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yes, the home hardware building is an actual building permit. So we're able to enforce the removal of material. And at this stage, it is for a minor variance, and we haven't received a building permit for that property. And once we once we receive it, we can circulate from there.
Just remember it's a listed building.
Yeah, and with it being a listed building, we don't have a lot of control. If it was a designated building, we could talk more about the removal of the material, but it kind of, it's hard for us to really enforce anything. But when something on the site is demolished, we will review it.
I appreciate that. And I think you picked up on some neat tidbit on the 493 Ridge Road West one. Did you say, was Neil Peart or something, a drummer for a band, was there at one time? So there's some really interesting history on that building.
Yeah, I believe his aunt actually owned the house, and they had practiced and produced a song in the house. So it's definitely got an interesting history behind it.
Great. Thank you for your work on that.
No problem.
Okay, did I somehow mute you, Bianca, can we, this is the Zoom problem I'm having. Was I to blame for muting you somehow? No, I was. Okay, so, okay. Just trying, okay. Somebody else admitted blame, so we won't say who, we'll just move on. So, thank you. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I did notice that too. I see the mayor would like to ask a question.
Well, it's just,
go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Dunstall, or chair in this case. I just, it's for 493 Ridge Road West. It's just a spelling mistake, and it's a frustrating one because it's spell check, I think. It always adds an S on Alway. And I know that from living near Alway Road. So that just should be clarified or corrected.
We'll do that.
It's a frustrating little thing, but.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Do we have another hand up? We don't have any other. Sorry. Oh, Kate. Oh, go ahead, Kate. Can you unmute yourself?
I was
Go
just
ahead.
curious about, through you, John Dunstall, Councillor Dunstall, about 35 Main Street West to you, Bianca. I was wondering, you were quick with that one, and we moved fast through it. And I was curious about, is it moving forward with the balcony, or is it still in the original stages? Like you asked us to advise on it through our time off with COVID, and I was just curious.
Yeah, so we will be preparing a memo to bring to council, asking for relief on the designation review at this time, so they can move forward with the window into a door. But we will be including in the memo that we will be looking at it in the future for designation.
I was wondering, as an aside, did you hear at all about the sign they discovered underneath the signage there?
I saw your email, but I didn't hear too much about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chair, I'll add,
Yes, I think Councillor Cadwell.
I was just gonna, Kate's,
Hang on, Councillor Cadwell had his hand up next.
I was just gonna comment on Kate's question about the sign.
We'll get back to it, but Councillor Cadwell is next up. Go ahead, Councillor Cadwell.
Councillor Cadwell is not a member of the committee, John?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
I
can wait.
I understand. Yeah, okay, go ahead,
I'll wait.
Councillor Bothwell.
You allow me to come in, that's fine. I just had a
Yeah,
comment.
yeah, go ahead, Councillor Bothwell. Good point.
No, I clarified it with the clerk prior to the meeting because I know that this is new for all of us and that
It
there's
is. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, we're going to make mistakes.
in the audience and
Yeah.
just clarified whether or not it's a committee meeting, and it is a committee meeting, not.
Yes, it is.
So I just wanted to clarify on Kate's question, because when it came to my attention and all of us through email, I did reach out to the Boondog owners who were doing the renovation and who uncovered the sign, the original sign on the Home Hardware building. I have not yet heard back from her. So I did ask if they were preserving it or saving it, and unfortunately I didn't get a response back, but I did reach out to them as well. So she had contacted me originally when she was looking for a contact in the heritage, in the archives.
Okay.
So that's how the connection came about. She emailed me and said, could I give her a contact in the archives? And I passed that on, so I had her name. So that's why I reached out to her about the sign.
Okay. And you have a question, go ahead.
Comment, actually.
Or comment, sorry.
I via email spoke with Janet Oakes at the Grimsby Museum, and they're very interested in that sign as well. So.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, I see it's been covered up again, so we'll have to pursue it. I believe, Councillor Cadwell, you had a question. Go ahead. Or a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's one of the first times not first time, it's been a while since I've sat through a heritage meeting, and I enjoyed the composition of the meeting. But just to let everybody know, as an FYI, the Home Hardware little history has been stopped. The Masonic Lodge, the Masons, have moved out from the upstairs, which they have been up there for a lot of years. So just for everybody's information, John, that's all I wanted to pass on, that with the work that's being done at the Home Hardware, which is looking good, the Masonic Lodges is now moved out. So yeah, just an FYI. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Councillor Vane, did you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add something really quickly. In the past, with other committees, we've always respected the fact that councillors are allowed to comment. So I just
It's okay, Councillor Vane. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a
Thank you.
protocol, and I wasn't following the protocol. That's all. Thank you, though. Appreciate it. Okay. Back to the steering committee. Are we going to discuss that now? The steering committee for the Grimsby Beach area. Kate, had you any comments or feelings about being on the steering committee? Can you?
Absolutely. When Michael Seaman was here at the beginning stages after 2015, when Janice and him approached the beach, and we weren't very receptive of the study to move forward with Heritage, the tone of the community has changed, and it's really been with working with the planning staff and other members, other staff members, and when they had concerns in council. And I really think that this steering committee is really important, and to just keep that positive relationship going with the town, the different kind of people down here. And I think that we're in a good place right now. So absolutely. I think I have seen some people walking through the neighborhood with masks and lots of clipboards. So I'm not sure if it's already started, but it'd be lovely to start communicating with residents just so they feel that they are involved from the beginning.
Great.
Right?
Okay. How do we see this process going forward? How are we going to form this committee? Antonetta, do you want to speak on that? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair Dunstall. Hi, everyone. So yes, the Grimsby Beach study is excitingly moving forward. Our consultants were out just taking a preliminary scan of the property so that they can get used to it. The intent was to create a steering committee with a member from the Heritage Board and a series of other members from the community as well. And then our goal was to ideally have the community lead a walking tour in the neighborhood and not have staff or the consultants do it, because the people who live there know Grimsby Beach best. So that would look like one of our next steps. We've communicated some of the key next steps to both the area councillors and council as a whole so that they are aware. But ultimately, we have a communications plan that once that's approved, we will share that with this committee and everyone involved, and then start to either amend that communication plan or execute it. But we also wanted to leverage the pavilion that is nearby the oak tree that was hit by the lightning. I don't know if I'm describing that well, but there's a pavilion that sort of emulates what was previously at the center of, I would say, Grimsby Beach. And we want to use that to announce the study, to share a map and some cool historical images and get the community involved that way. But really, we're looking to the community to be the experts in terms of how they want to be communicated with, what works, what dates and times work. So we hope to not dictate that, but to be responsive to the needs of the community. So the communication plan that we're developing will be very iterative once we have this committee in place and once we've done our preliminary consultation. The only sensitivity we're dealing with right now is a time sensitivity. We'd like to get the walking tour done sooner rather than later, just from a weather constraint perspective. And then we will be soliciting more feedback on how the community wants to be engaged with. But I'm hoping that this process will build on what you said, Kate, sort of building positive dialogue, relations between the town and the community, and really community-led. We are not the experts of this area. You really are, and we want to create a plan that is responsive and respectful of that.
I think that's a great approach. Additional to what I was saying earlier, Walter and Janice had started a focus group of about 6 or 7 residents, and they had participated in a lot of emails back and forth, a few meetings with Janice and Michael, and the Willowbank, and the other study that went through with the university. I can't remember the name of the university. But so we already do have a group of people that were involved. I'm not sure if we would start from scratch or if we would just pull them out of the closet and dust them off.
So through you, Chair Dunstall, we have provided all that information to our consultants. We've reviewed it ourselves. If it's not necessary to start from scratch, we won't. That said, perhaps the nature of the community has changed. Our goal in getting someone on a committee of this nature is really that they should then catalyze the message and help get the word out to everyone else. So collectively, our goal is to have that conversation and say who will be effective at this particular role. There'll be an opportunity for everyone to be involved in every step of the process, but who has sort of the trust of the community that could say, if there's a meeting tonight, they'll listen and they'll come out, more than just the town saying that. So that's the goal of selecting the people who will be on the committee. So happy to review that focus group. And we did provide the university study to our consultants so that anything that they can leverage to save us money or move the process along more quickly, we will. The other thing we've done is we've reached out to the 2 area councillors to see if they had any suggestions for who should be on this committee, and we're awaiting those responses. And then we can sit down and decide who can be an effective sort of message giver and really encourage the community to take part in what we're doing.
Thank you. Antonetta, who's taking the lead on the steering committee, the formulation of it? Is it the consultant or is it staff here? So who's putting that committee together? Is it staff?
Yes, so through you, Chair, the staff is taking the lead on putting together the committee, but we really want to look to our councillors and members of the Heritage Board to recommend people for that committee, so that we're looking to the best people to be on the committee. And consultants really wouldn't know who should be on the committee. So that would be up to us and our board members. Yeah.
So we're recommending that Kate be on this committee, I guess, at this point, and she's volunteered to do that. So Kate, big smile. Thank you. Great.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
Do we need a motion for that? To volunteer on a, we're checking into that.
She would be representing the Heritage Board, so
Oh,
theoretically,
yeah, I should do a motion. Yeah. Okay. You'll write that up. Can I get a first and seconder for the other motion to accept the verbal report from Bianca? I need a first. Oh, Anne for first, and a second, Olia. And so I'll read that out to be it resolved that the verbal update in regards to 35 Main Street West, 262 Main Street West, 352 Main Street West, Grimsby Beach Study, and 493 Ridge Road West be received. All in favor? Thank you. It's carried. And the other motion, I need a first and a seconder. Do I see it? Oh, Councillor Bothwell and Anne Brayback. And be it resolved that Kate Sharrow be appointed to the Grimsby Beach Study Steering Committee. All in favor? Yeah, that's carried. Thank you. So we're moving right along, and our next item on the agenda is meet the director. And Antonetta, take it away. It's your, you got the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dunstall. Hello, everyone. If I haven't already communicated with you, I'm Antonetta Minikilo. I am the new Director of Planning, Building, and Bylaw here at the town. And to be quite honest, one of the things that drew me to take on this position was the rich heritage that you have here, and being a part of conserving that for future generations is absolutely a privilege, and it makes me really excited. And Bianca and I have already geeked out over a lot of heritage things here that are in this community. So I want to say that, you know, there's a passionate team here committed to heritage. And I also wanted to speak to some of my experience dealing with heritage. So I haven't outlined everything, but some of the key things that I wanted you to know about me and my experience with heritage is that I've been a member of the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals for several years now. I've also sat on the board of directors of the Ontario Association of Heritage Professionals on a variety of committees. I have a master's of environmental studies, which focuses on planning, but I did choose to write my thesis on the economics of heritage preservation. And this was, all of my professors were telling me, oh, you'll never be able to find a career in heritage, so don't write your thesis on heritage. And I pursued anyway, because I really thought that heritage is an excellent way to drive economic development, to drive sense of community, sense of place, and it really warrants attention from the planning department. So I wrote my thesis on that. And I have also led my former communities to be a recipient of the Lieutenant Governor Ontario Heritage Award for Community Leadership. I've submitted nominations for a series of committee members that I've worked with to win Lifetime Achievements Awards, and I've been happy to be a part of that. I was also a key contributor to the University of Waterloo study undertaken by Professor Robert Shipley, which, while dated, is still referred to today, and that's about property values in heritage designations, and is there an effect? Because there's this common misconception that your property value is going to drop once you're designated as a heritage building or located in a heritage conservation district. So I was a contributor to that study. And across the bottom, you see 3 buildings in Brampton that I project managed the restoration of, and also helped with funding arrangements for it, and working with also, in some cases, the middle building, the development industry coming to the table and really contributing towards the restoration of CPR Station. For a variety of these buildings, we were successful in winning national recognition as well. So that's just a quick highlight of some of my days in heritage and the things that we were able to accomplish, and excited to have an opportunity to do that here in Grimsby. Next slide. So teamwork makes the dream work. First, I wanted to acknowledge that the planning team, as many of you know, is at 50% capacity. We are actively trying to recruit staff to fill some vacancies. And also just let you know that, people like Bianca and other people on the team have really tried hard to advance heritage, but to be honest, heritage represented about 20 to 30% of their time. So I wanted to thank you for your patience if things haven't moved along as quickly as you would have liked them to, or if you weren't seeing sort of the action you wanted to on heritage, but they have been torn between many competing priorities. And heritage right now represents a smaller portion of their work, although we're working towards changing that. One of the things that I was also very excited about that I wanted to take a moment to speak about is here in Grimsby, you have an engaged citizenry. And I think that that's a huge asset, and I can't wait to partner with the citizens of Grimsby to really do some interesting things here in Grimsby and advance heritage preservation and conservation. The other thing is that we have such a unique community, whether it's the heritage buildings or how you didn't really develop along the waterfront like many other communities. It really was the fruit belt, and Grimsby Beach has that portion of history along the waterfront, but really the bulk of our heritage isn't along the waterfront. And just learning and reading some of the history books, we have such a rich history, and I'm excited to share that both with current residents, but also future generations of people who will call Grimsby home. There's also an abundance of exciting opportunities to work on here at Grimsby, whether it's advancing some designations or the Grimsby Beach study or a series of other things. It's really an exciting time to be part of the Grimsby team. The other thing that I like to do is learning sessions, both for staff and the board members, if they're interested in perhaps learning about different projects for heritage, how to tackle some heritage challenges, how to deal with misconceptions in the community. And so Bianca and I are both excited to put together some potential learning sessions. And I think we tried to also invite some committee members to, if their time would allow, be part of the recent heritage conference. And those are just things that we want to offer up more frequently so that we can all sort of elevate Grimsby's heritage together. And as I indicated at the beginning, we are staffing up to rise to the challenge of protecting heritage as it should be protected here in Grimsby. We're working on a dedicated heritage planner and freeing up Bianca's time so that she can work on this closer to 100% of her time instead of 30% of her time. And we're also working on bringing in an intern and some volunteers to help with that. And so we're really committed to, assembling a team that can help advance key heritage opportunities here at the town. So some of the key goals that, I have and I'd like to share with you, if we were meeting in person, and maybe we'll do it next time we meet or find a digital way to do it, is I'd like to have a sort of a visioning session with the committee in terms of what are your key priorities as committee members and how can we work together to advance them. But ideally, we want to elevate the heritage portfolio here at the town. We want to increase our Part 4 designations. We want to update the heritage register and inventory. We also want to work on creating some outreach and marketing materials. And we wanted to talk to the committee about things like creating some newsletters, a walking tour. Bianca and I are actively working on some brochures and frequently asked questions because there's a lot of myth busting that happens with heritage preservation. Other ideas that we're working on developing and we want your input on are developing an annual plaque and award ceremony. Taking care of a heritage building and investing that kind of money is a huge commitment. And people often do this on their own dime. And sometimes we can offer them grants, but sometimes we can't. And we want to acknowledge the people who really are excellent stewards of our heritage buildings through an award ceremony program and annual plaque reception. As I said earlier, collaboration is a key part of how I think we can advance the heritage portfolio. And ideally, we would create a work plan together for 2021 to 2022. And so Bianca and I will work out how at our next meeting we can leverage that to create a heritage work plan, which will hold both the staff accountable and will also identify opportunities for the Heritage Committee to participate and help advance key goals, whether that's helping us do some research or taking a crack at writing a designation report or maybe a walking tour portion. Those are all things we'd love to talk about with you, and we're working towards developing an agenda of that nature for our next meeting. And as I said, a dedicated heritage resource for the town. I think that our heritage is just too important to the community and to placemaking here that it does need a dedicated person to do it justice. So we're working towards that as well. Also, what's depicted on your right is we're working on something called the Heritage Homeowners Manual. Oftentimes people, if it's a listed building, we really don't have much control. They might go in and do something that is unsympathetic to the building, and sometimes it's unknowingly. So the more information we can get out there, the more help we can provide people and owners of heritage homes. Those are the things that we're looking at creating promotional materials. And what you have in front of you are some hand sketches from Walter Basic, who is our deputy director on our planning team, and also very enamored with Grimsby's heritage. And we're working on this brochure that has some of these sketches, but gives some hints on how to deal with masonry repair or window repair, because oftentimes people just don't know and they replace it and perhaps they don't know how to do it appropriately. So those are the things that we've been working on in the background and we're excited to share with you in the near future. Is there one more slide? No, so that was it for me. I didn't want to take up too much of the committee's time, but very happy to answer any questions. Maybe we can stop sharing the screen, revert back to everyone showing, and we could see if there's any questions of me. I'd be happy to answer and provide any information.
Councillor Bothwell.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Antonetta, this is an expanded version of what I've heard before, and I'm excited to hear. I think I got a little bit more on you out of this one, on some of the accomplishments and some of the neat ideas you have looking forward. I don't know if you've made yourself familiar yet with what the committee has done, which is very exciting to date. Where we amended our terms of reference. We actually, for the first time, created a work plan, which identifies almost all the things you've just said. As a committee, we created that, and it's for the rest of the term of this council. So I think it'll be exciting for us to work with you on the work plan that the committee has already basically put in place and started to accomplish some of those goals. And then we actually even put in a self-evaluation module so we can evaluate just how much we have accomplished annually and then towards the end of the term of council. So I think it's exciting that you seem to be on the same track as what this committee has already discussed and has going. So I think when you talk about a 2021-22 work plan, I think what we could do is go back to what we've already looked at as focus items and then maybe refine that. It's a great start. So I like the idea that you're doing the homeowners manual. I think that's going to be an excellent tool. And I think as As supports for the advisory committee, I'm excited to look forward to how planning staff can help support the committee in its work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I will add that a work plan really needs to be developed in terms of actions, deliverables, and who's going to be doing what. So I think we'll further take that existing work plan that you have. We'll build in any new ideas that might be worth considering for this term, and then we'll really create an action plan around it so that we know how we're going to deliver, when we're going to deliver, and who's going to be responsible for delivery.
I totally agree. I think that we need, looking at our roles and how planning staff support the committee. I think it's important that we do that collectively, and it not together, and we determine that, not that it feeds into each part of it, right?
Absolutely. That our goal ideally was to have visioning boards all around and have the committee help us write sort of how we would execute on the work plan. But like I said, we're looking for techniques to do that at our next meeting so that we can collaboratively write how we're going to deliver on our collective work plan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice to meet you again. It's very exciting to have you start this role with us at the town. I was going to bring it up under new business, not even sure because I knew you'd be here. But along those lines, one of the things that I know we keep talking about is a sense of a little bit of spinning our wheels with no systems in place. How we just keep kind of like bottlenecking up, suggest this house to put on a list, suggest this house, which it seems like with your entry into the town, it's going to start working a little bit smoothly, a little bit with more logistics and it just with your expertise. One of the things that I sense with the town was founded in 1790, and it's a really historic town that is experiencing lots of growth. And there's a sense of an identity crisis almost, where we need to almost, like a lot of towns like Kleinburg, Niagara-on-the-Lake, they establish, like they do studies and they establish the identity of their town. And there is room for growth in a historic town, right? And I think that I'm hoping moving forward, we can figure out and define our brand identity, not where we put a logo on a page, but you know, the kind of designs and the kinds of movement we want to make in our town. And this is, I'm hopeful that, and then when you're talking about walking tours, and well, we can define our points of difference with our fruit barns and our neat outbuildings in the back of a lot of our historic towns that we don't even know. Like I was doing some research and I discovered a really neat outbuilding. I was researching outbuildings, and it's like a shoemaker's house in the back of a house, historic house. And then maybe with knowing what our points of difference are, then we can start fine tuning how we put homes on lists and then establish walking tours based on these things that we've found, like our fruit barns or our very rare rock houses that Ancaster might have a lot more, where we have a lot less, and a lot of things like that. So this is kind of exciting. So welcome.
Great. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. I think you mentioned a lot of great things. We need to prioritize what we're putting on the list and what gets designated when. The prioritization has to be sort of, for lack of a better word, in order of threat, like which buildings are in most need of intervention on behalf of this committee and which would be a nice to have but are in a stable area. So I'd like us to become more strategic in terms of our efforts, and all that intimate knowledge that the community has, that's irreplaceable. So we need to capture things like that in a walking tour so that it could survive. And the identity piece, I totally agree, it's a big one. I don't like pitting growth against heritage. That conversation is never a positive one. And it's how can we save what makes Grimsby Grimsby and really celebrate that in a meaningful way that will honor the people who have been here for a long time and the people who are newcomers to our town, and they can celebrate in all the things that makes Grimsby special. So really happy to hear you say that, Kate.
Any other questions for Antonetta? Seeing none, I have a motion here to accept. Oh, did you put your hand up, Councillor Cadwell? Yep, there it is. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, again, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me just to comment. A piece of property that I've had the opportunity to visit a couple times is the old Stone Shop Museum on across from Mayor Jordan's, where he had his business in that. And now, I'd like to maybe if Antonetta could, I'd like to sometime introduce Antonetta to the owner now, who's Brent Sajan, who owns the Stone Shop Museum, and he is just doing unbelievable work of restoration inside right now and working on the outside too. So I think just talking about heritage history, that's another building that's kind of gets forgotten a little bit, but the new owner now, Mr. Sajan, is he's all about heritage too. So I think down the road, I'd like to maybe set up a meeting with Antoinette and Brent Sajan. So just bringing that to life again, so to speak. Thank you.
I'd be happy to do that.
And, oh, sorry, there we go. And also those are the types of nominations that eventually could come forward for an award. And then the Heritage Committee could decide on who the most deserving for this year was. And we could publicly acknowledge people at a council meeting for their commitment to heritage restoration and preservation here in the town. So that's the intent of that award ceremony, is to maybe acknowledge even the people who are quietly working away and not looking for any attention, but it really is a labor of love for them. So I'd love to meet that owner and then start a list of properties that could potentially get some recognition.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments, I have a motion here to accept the presentation from our planning director. I need a first and second. Kate. And Olia. And be it resolved that the presentation from the Director of Planning be received. All in favor? That's carried. And moving forward on our agenda, we are now going to reports, and we have a list of 5 homes and an update on the status. So if I could turn it over to Bianca, I believe you're going to give us these reports. Thank you.
Sure. So I do have a picture on the screen of the property. We have discussed this one quite a bit, and the designation report is ready. It's for 104 Main Street East, and we are pursuing designation under Part 5 of the Act. I have given the reports in the agenda. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Councillor Dunstall, can you hear me? So before we get too far into them, I just kind of have a question about what's the best way to go over them, because to be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to go through all 5 in the short amount of time that we've had with them in this final stage. But I do have some broad questions about all of them. And then the ones that I have read, I have some specific questions. So I'm not sure what the best approach to go over these would be. And so I'm just looking for some guidance from the chair on that one.
Well, we can do it one home at a time. Do you have any questions concerning 104 Main Street?
Yeah,
itself?
let me just get to my list.
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay there. So this one is the one that backs onto Centennial Park. And so from my limited reading thus far of the report, I was just wondering if a couple more clauses from the provincial policy statement would be beneficial to be added, given the fact that there's a strong association with this piece of land to the neutral people, given what was found at Centennial Park. And specifically, I'm looking at clauses 2.6.2 and 2.6.4 of the provincial policy statement, which I don't know that I need to read now, but I can if that's you know, desirable to the group.
Do you have any comment, Antonetta?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think we need to read them out loud. We're familiar with the provincial policy statements. So just so that we're correct, you want that added to the policy portion of the report so that the PPS 2.62 and 2.64 is in there, just to acknowledge the proximity to the neutral peoples?
So the section of the report that's provincial policy statement under 3.1, and it lists off the provincial policies that that are felt to be pertinent to this property. I think it would make sense to include 2.6.2 and 2.6.4 as well. So it'd actually be 1 through 5.
Happy to amend the report to include those additional two.
And I mean,
PPS
that's not definitive, right? That was just my read and my thinking. I'm obviously open to, you know, the expertise of the group on that one. Further on that vein, I believe, where are we? No puns intended there. Sorry, Counselor. I believe that from the official plan, 8.15 would be beneficial to be added, as well as 8.20 through 8.22 and 8.23. And I guess I had a broader question as well. You know, there's been mention made of the region when it comes to consultation, when it comes to roadworks and that type of thing. And given that Main Street East is a regional road, this is kind of a question to staff, I suppose, that would help inform whether some of the clauses from the official plan would also benefit to be included. What's the interplay there that happens on a regional road between the town when there is infrastructure roadworks? Is that just something that the region goes and does on their own? Or is there involvement and consultation with the town in that type of a situation?
So through you, Chair, there is involvement and consultation with the town. There's the EA process, and typically we would identify in a sensitive area a need for archaeological assessment, which would have to be done to our satisfaction. We would review items of that nature. So we work very closely with the region on any expansions or changes to that.
Yeah, so I think then to be consistent with the policies that are included on the regional side of this piece, the official plan equivalents for the roadworks and types of things would also benefit to be included. So just what if anyone's jotting them down, it was 8.15, 8.20 through 0.22, and 8.23.
Yeah. So through you, Chair, if I could just add, I'm understanding historically, like these are in here, they're a template of what is related to heritage, and Olia brings up a good point, but we just want the committee to know that this is not intended to be an exhaustive list, and any policies that aren't cited in here still apply. This is just showing that we have policies that relate to heritage conservation. So even if something isn't in here, we are not in a disadvantaged position in terms of dealing with the property. Ideally, we like to keep the template as consistent as possible, because what may happen just by the nature of human error is that the next one will forget to take out something related to perhaps archaeology or Indigenous presence in communities, and then it'll be there and it shouldn't be there. So I think, as I'm understanding it, historically, this was just used as a base for why we even undertake heritage preservation here and what policies support it, and just some level of reassurance. If a policy is not in here, regional, PPS, OP, or otherwise, it does not in any way weaken this report. It doesn't limit our chances at the Conservation Review Board should the report be appealed in any way. So while we're happy to make some amendments, just note that they don't need to be in here to be applicable to what we're doing. It's a point of clarification.
Thank you for that, through you, Mr. Chair. I just think that if we're discussing it, I don't think it would hurt to add, and actually in my review of these 5 nearly at the same time, for consistency, a lot of these were points that I was thinking would be valid to be included in all of the rest of them, with exception to the archaeological piece, because that one seems to be very uniquely specific to this particular property. But I felt that with exception to that clause, all of the rest of them would benefit to be included. So I hear you that it doesn't hurt not to have it in there, but I think it doesn't hurt to have it in there.
Yeah, happy to amend the ones that can be consistently used across each designation report. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. I also have a pretty long grocery list of spelling and grammatical mistakes, which I don't think would be the best use of the committee's time. So I could probably include that in a separate email to the committee on all of them as well. So that's pretty well. Oh, as well, there was a question I had on, I guess it's page 21 of our agenda, which is the 5.0 site analysis, site development. And it's the reference to the 1876, the atlas showing the owners, Mrs. Racy and Mrs. Ferris. And so I just noted that it looks like the report doesn't really contain anything on either of those two ladies other than that line mentioned there. And a point of clarification that I wanted to make was that I believe the correct spelling of Mrs. Ferris is actually F-E-R-R-E-S, and that confusion might have led to the inability to find additional information on that individual, because I did take a look at the Grimsby Independent online and I did find a bunch of articles, which I don't know if they pertain to her, but if the Land Registry Office has records to the lady's first name and something could be tied, it looks to me like there's an opportunity there to strengthen the report in terms of the history, certainly around Mrs. Ferris. Mrs. Racy search did not give me as good results for pun reasons on her last name, but I think there's more on Mrs. Ferris, and I would be happy to provide that to staff if they're interested.
So these corrections delight me. So thank you so much, Olia. And I say that because we need to work together on these reports. Sometimes we're scrambling, we're dealing with limited opportunities to do as much thorough research as we would like. And that's that collaborative piece. Ideally, we would be co-writing these reports before they came to the committee. So any of your corrections, any additional resources that we could use, or spelling, grammatical, while we will do our best to ensure that there's fewer of them as we move forward. If you could just email Bianca if you wish to copy the committee or not, I'll leave that up to you. But that's that more collaborative approach that I'd like to take in the future about bringing these reports together. And it's not staff has written them and we're submitting them for your review. It's that we've worked on them together. We've leveraged your research skills and your different abilities to really write a comprehensive report, giving us the best chance to have a successful designation of a property. And that's why I say I'm delighted that we have a committee that will actually do all that work in the background, but in the future, maybe we'll collaboratively.
Careful there, Antonetta, we're volunteers. We're not the ones paid to do this.
Oh, I understand, but if Ms. Ferris, that's an excellent correction that we can then go back and help do that, right? We can leverage the work that you've already done. Yeah. So happy to make those corrections.
Similar correction with the last name on page 24. It was Godard the first time around and Gaffard the second time around. So I will provide that to Bianca. A question that's more broad on the, I guess all of the reports, which would have to do with 7.4 cultural heritage value or interest. And Tina, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there was effort made by predecessors to digitize some of the old designation reports. And, you know, if we're successful, this will ultimately become one. And I imagine that the newer ones would just be automatically uploaded online and you know, there wouldn't have to be that kind of going back in time to digitize things. But I guess my question is, you know, the statement here says that the statement of cultural heritage value or interest, all that good stuff, is available for viewing, you know, during business hours at the town hall. Is there any, and so the only thing that's online is the actual designation report itself. Is there anything that from stopping us from actually putting all of the nice contextual stuff that supports the designation online as well? I'm thinking like community benefits for, you know, research projects for school kids, general interest, transparency to the community, that type of thing. Is there anything that would preclude us from digitizing the, you know, the kind of qualitative stuff that went around the actual designation itself?
So through you, Mr. Chair, no, not at all. And I would encourage that we put all of the report up there for all the reasons you mentioned and more. Yep.
Okay. I think
Is that everything for 104?
it might need to be,
Oh,
sounds like.
Which is-
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's, Bianca, move on to 130 Main Street East, Bianca. Thank you.
Hi, yes. So I have up here the picture again with the GIS picture. And again, we are pursuing designation of 130 Main Street East. And if you guys have any questions.
Is there questions? I can't see anybody raising their hand right now except for Councillor Bothwell, because you're not on my screen. Councillor Bothwell, go ahead.
Yeah, because we don't have the raise hand feature, I think. We just
No, we've lost everything with this
So
presentation.
I just reached out a bit for to some of my contacts in the archives about these properties quickly, and got a little bit of feedback that I don't know whether you feel it's appropriate to incorporate into these properties. All of the properties were apparently on United Empire Loyalist land grants. The original patents don't seem to be mentioned in the reports or the recipients of the patents or why the British government granted them. UE to the history of these designations of the reports. I don't know if you feel that's an important factor to include, Antonetta.
I would say as much as you have included, so United Empire Loyalists, that's an important piece. And if you can send that over, we would happily incorporate that into all of the reports where it's pertinent.
And then some other information is that some of these properties in the 4 reports were the original lands of Abraham or William Nellis, but they don't seem to be reflected. They kind of link the property only to Robert Nellis. Abraham and William Nellis were also military officers, fully engaged combatants in the War of 1812. And Abraham was among the most prominent Ontario landowners in his time. There's a little bit of a gap, it appears, in recognizing them within these reports. I'm just giving you a brief overview of some of the summary points that I got. And then 130 Main Street particularly, Theron Wolverton, other than remotely by marriage, wasn't as impacted into this building in life. He didn't live in Grimsby as he left for university and remained there. He served in the Northern Army in the Civil War and went on to become a doctor. Returned only part-time to Grimsby after his retirement, but mostly remained in Florida. And Robert Nellis is a great nephew who didn't have anything to do with this property either. Abraham Nellis received the original patent for the property in 1801, and his family farmed these lands between Maine and the lake, and he's not mentioned. So as well, nothing is written of Walter Henry Nellis, the owner builder of 130 Main Street East. He was a significant fruit grower, known as the first to have shipped train carloads of apples to the prairies from his Main Street East farm in 1891. He served in the Lincoln Militia and the Fenian Raids. He was the secretary of the committee responsible for the town's incorporation. Having drafted the incorporation petition, he was also appointed returning officer after the act of incorporation was passed. He was Grimsby's township clerk, a singer, and a warden of St. Andrew's Church for a number of years. So I think some of this stuff this is just some points that came up that maybe needed to be reviewed a little further in incorporation into these reports. So I don't know if that information, if we passed it on to Bianca, if she could dig a little deeper on these reports, because a lot of this information that was given to me seems to apply to all of the properties or requires a little bit of clarification on some of them. So I'm almost thinking that for us to go through this meeting tonight and advance these reports quickly is not the best use of our time, in the sense that we've had a very short time to look over 5 designation reports, which we have to get right, because we don't want them to be out there in the public domain and then find out that maybe we've missed something that's critical and we have to go back and try to amend it. So spending the time on getting it and getting as much information as we can to have a strong, defendable designation is important. Can we maybe look at adding some of this information from Olia and what I've received, and then bringing it back maybe to the next meeting, just to give us a bit more time to ensure that we've captured any potential gaps or little pieces that we want to fit into these reports.
Yeah, sure. So as I said earlier, through you, Mr. Chair, if you have anything that we can add to the reports, we're happy to do that. We do have Walter Henry Nels cited on page 47 of your agenda, and we can build that out. Some of the things that we can consider if the committee wants more time is we can defer moving the designations until the next meeting, which we're happy to do. But also, I think the recommendation would just be that staff continue to proceed with the designation, which can include, after consulting with the Heritage Advisory Committee, amendments to the report. It wouldn't be that we're passing the bylaw or anything like that, putting out the notice of intention to designate tomorrow. So there still is time to amend the reports. That's exactly what this consultation with the Heritage Board is about. And so anything that you have, please send it. We'll amend the reports. Then what we could do is send the amended reports to the committee almost immediately once we've made the changes. And then the committee can have from the time we've made the changes until the next committee meeting date. And then hopefully there's comfort level with staff proceeding. But as I said, any details can always be amended up until we put out a notice of intention to designate, and there we have to list the attribute statements. So happy to do that. But also you could still continue the process of recommend designation. It would just mean that this editing and iterative process continues until we're happy. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think that's a great idea. If we can just continue to submit this, and then, like you said, next week or this week, and then you can come back with another draft to the committee for the next.
Sure. I
Very
see.
well. Thank you.
So just through you, Councillor Dunstall.
Yeah.
For the benefit of my understanding, when we say, kind of proceed and then in tandem work on these edits, which step are we looking to take next that would be in tandem with edits and tweaking?
So through you, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
go
if
ahead.
you follow the order, sort of in what comes next, once we consult with the Heritage Advisory Committee, we can always go back and make edits to the report. But the recommendation from this committee would be that staff proceeds or is directed to proceed with the designation process as prescribed under the Heritage Act, right? I see. So what we could do, there's a series of lists all outlined in with standards and guidelines. Is that correct? The Heritage Toolkit follows that list. So we follow that exact list as prescribed by the toolkit. So I think that could be what we do next, or happy for all these edits to happen and the reports to come back to us. Yeah.
I guess through you, Councillor Dunstall, my only concern with if the next step is serving notices of intention to designate or whichever the step is, that we're not hamstringing ourselves into an unrealistic timeline of finishing these reports. Because like I said, the depth that I went into 104, I only had the time to do in 5-6 days, one other of these 5. So I don't want to paint us into a corner where we're then having a timeline to go up against. And as a volunteer, with a full-time job and home commitments, that we're then stuck having to do all of this extra research. I'm just concerned about proceeding if that puts us in some kind of a time crunch. That's the only concern I wanted to raise.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, it doesn't put us in a time crunch. We won't issue the notice of intention to designate until the Heritage Board and everyone is satisfied with the contents of the report. So we can continue making those edits. Sometimes notices of intention can come out months and months later because this iterative process of getting the report right. Maybe it's a really contentious one, so we want to have a peer review, make sure we stand a really good chance at the Conservation Review Board. There's no time pressure or timeline that starts if we were to pass a recommendation to proceed with designation.
Okay, so Councillor Dunstall,
tonight.
Councillor Dunstall, are we okay then to, continue the communication and get the emails off to Bianca with, itemizing the things that we think, need either a spell check or whatever, and then it come back to us?
Yes, that is exactly what we're saying. Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep. Let's go through the other 3 homes if we could, and just for the sake of, especially for the public to see what we have here. Go ahead, Bianca. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another one here. This is 141 Main Street East. And again, we are pursuing designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And this is the house here on the one side and GIS on the other. If you have any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee on this house?
Not
Okay,
right.
you just have to speak up because I can't see at this point. No questions? So, oh,
Chair
Councillor
Dunstall?
Bothwell? Yeah, go ahead.
It's going to be very hard. I have not had time as well to go thoroughly over all of them, so I'm sure that I'll have some questions, but I'm sorry, I'm not
Okay.
prepared tonight either.
Sure. It sounds like everybody looks like they need more time, but I'd like Bianca to finish this, the reports, and then we can proceed with having a review and bringing it up at our next committee meeting. Go ahead, Bianca.
So through you, the chair, then do we want to move forward that you'll submit the edits for the 5 designation reports and then we'll go from there? Or did
I
we?
think that's what everybody on the committee would probably like to do. I'd like to finish these reports, so if we could do that.
Okay.
And I think we're working on a motion
Yeah.
at this point. So go ahead, Bianca. 147 and then 224.
Yeah, so I have 147 here. Again, pursuing designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And again, we have the house and the GIS. And if you have revisions you want to send in, we can continue to work on the documents. And then I'll just comment on the 224. This is a designated property, and we have a updated heritage, a history report, basically going over the house, where we've included the ice house, the carriage step, and many of the attributes on the house. I don't know if anyone had any specific questions about this site. Okay.
Are there any questions from the committee? Now that one is a separate motion.
Olia's
Because we're gonna,
here. Olia's got her hand up.
oh, good. Olia, go ahead.
So on this property, I had some of the similar thoughts on articles to include from the provincial plan and the official plan, and I confess I have yet to double check against the regional plan. So I will forward those along kind of as a package deal on all 5. But more specifically to the property, I was also interested to know whether there's merit in including the newer build garage / apartment in the write-up on the report, because there's a list of like the structures and the landscape and all that sort of thing. And although it's a newer build, I would argue that it's sympathetic or complementary, or whichever of those heritage words you want to use, to the landscape. And it definitely looks like the homeowners at the time made the effort to make it complement the existing heritage home. So I'm not sure if there's merit in including that in the kind of introductory section of the report, where it lists the property, I think context, I think it was, or the key attributes of the property or something like that. So that was just one point. I also went on a tour of this house back when the archives did a house tour in 2018, and they were handing out material that contained research they had done on the property. And I'm not sure if it's still there at the end of the road, but there was also mention of a tree at the end of the property that was kind of between the driveway that wraps and the driveway that goes straight into that garage / apartment loft thing. And that, I think, is also because that research indicated that tree was planted when the house was built. So if it's still there, I think it should be included along with the beech tree that has been added with this latest revision. Spelling and grammar will come in an email. Another bit of information that will be forthcoming that came from that home tour with the archives research was like birth detail information about the 5 generations of Udells that were associated with the home and, you know, their descendants. What else? Okay, Schaefer, yeah. Another thing I noticed on the town's website, and this is maybe just a procedural question through you, Councillor Dunstall. So the home right now is designated, and we're working on this report to augment the designation to include a couple of things that, you know, we didn't catch the first time. So on the website, it looks like it's not on the designated list, it's on the listed list. I'm misspeaking or whatever. So there's just a bit of, I don't know, on the website, it doesn't look like it's in the right spot unless this process has kicked it off the designation and that's why it's there. I'm just not clear on how that protocol works. So maybe Anthony can comment on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Bianca.
Through you, the chair. So we actually had a report come forward to the committee where we discussed the amending of bylaws. So some of the older designation reports don't actually have attributes listed. And this was one of the sites that didn't have them listed. And we wanted to make sure that the ice house and the carriage step were included. And we also went ahead and added a lot more attributes, as you can see within the report. And it doesn't take it off the list. It doesn't take away the protection. You'd be simply adding a new bylaw that would amend the previous one, but the current designation stands. And it should be on that list with the bylaw on the website, and I will double check that.
Okay, yeah, because I think I found it on the other one, but that's fine. That's all I had for this property.
Okay.
I'll email the other edits.
Good. Okay, before we go, if I might suggest, the updated status and activity report is separate. So let me deal with the motion on the properties first. And let me read it before I ask for a first and second, just so everybody's clear, because we've amended it from originally what it was. So resolved that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that the following properties, 104 Main Street East, 130 Main Street East, 141 Main Street East, 147 Main Street East be designated under Part 4 of Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act once edits have been made to the satisfaction of the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, and that staff proceed as prescribed by the Ontario Heritage Act and Heritage Tool Kit. So I'd be looking for a first and a second for that motion. Is everybody comfortable with that motion the way it stands? Any questions?
Dunstall, just one quick question. Is 224 on a separate motion?
Yes, yeah, because that's the ice hut.
Yeah,
And
thank
that's it. Yeah, it is on a separate motion. Yes. Thanks for bringing that up though. So yeah, it doesn't get lost. No further questions. Could I get a first and a second? Councillor Bothwell. And I'm looking for second hand. Yes, Kate. So I'm going to read it again. So we're all clear. Resolved that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that the following properties, 104 Main Street East, 130 Main Street East, 141 Main Street East, 147 Main Street East, be designated under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, once edits have been made to the satisfaction of the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, and that staff proceed as prescribed by the Ontario Heritage Act and Heritage Toolkit. All in favor? Great, that's carried. Good. Good work. Wow. Okay, then I have a separate motion for 224. Just want to, 224 Main Street East, the Adele House and the Ice Hut. And that reads as resolved that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that the property at 224 Main Street East designation bylaw be amended to add significant attributes. So that would be the ice hut and everything else that was mentioned, and including possibly the tree, if that be the case, or anything like that. Is everybody comfortable with that? Oh, Malia, is that a question?
Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable advancing it at this stage, given the edits that I just mentioned and the ones that will be forthcoming in an email to, like, unless we add in that language, like subject to the edits and that you had in the last one, I wouldn't be comfortable advancing that.
Okay, well, we can add that. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to do that right now. Good. Oh, and so you'll, okay, all right. Yes. Yeah, okay. So let me read that again, just to make everybody comfortable. Resolved that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that the property at 224 Main Street East designation bylaw be amended to add significant attributes once edits have been made to the satisfaction of the the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, and that staff proceed as prescribed by the Ontario Heritage Act and Heritage Toolkit. How's that? Good. Can I get a first and a second for that one? Olia and Anne. I'll read it once more. Be it resolved that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that the property at 224 Main Street East designation bylaw be amended to add significant attributes once edits have been made to the satisfaction of the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, and the staff proceed as prescribed by the Ontario Heritage Act and Heritage Toolkit. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That's good. And so now we move on to updates, status, and activity report. I turn it back to Bianca, making her work hard tonight. Go ahead. Oh.
Sorry, through you, the chair. I have the updated status and activity sheet here, and I've just gone through and highlighted the changes in yellow. So this obviously will be changed. We're going to be making amendments for 141, 147. 8 to 10, we are working on finishing up the report and hopefully bringing it to the November or December Heritage meeting. Again, 122, we're working on completing the designation report. And then we have 130, 104. Those will be updated to say we're working on the reports. And again, with 224. The outstanding designation plaques, as Antonetta said earlier, we're actually going to be having a plaque evening where we can actually celebrate the dedicated conservers, and we wanted to make it a special night, but we are going to be working on in the background getting those plaques made. And then the Grimsby Remembers plaques, we are working with, so these are the updates here that we've received. We have had some change with the company we're using, so we're working with them on the original drafts just to get them ready back to with the submitted edits from the committee. And then these two plaques here, actually, we're in the process of arranging installation. We have to go on site and put in the locates, and then they'll come in and deliver them. So we're in the process of getting that done. And then we gave you the updates early on the land use planning study. And again, we're waiting for some updates for the Heritage Register. If you guys have any addresses that you want us to include for future meetings. And 78 Livingston, we had a request for removal from the register. Due to some COVID closures, we haven't quite finished our evaluation. So that's something we're also working on in the background. And 36 and 38 have not submitted their reasons for wanting to be removed, and our statutory requirements do not start until those are submitted. So we have a little bit of time, but we are working in the background to get these started. If you guys have any questions.
Oh, good. Everybody's hand is up. I think, Kate, I think you can go first.
I was just curious about 36 and 38. I keep pondering this being on just this list, right? This is the homes. I'm not talking about the homes at this moment, right? I'm more concerned about the fence that's approaching 200 years old, and the barn in the back, the very rare barn in the back that is also approaching 200 years old. It's a huge point of difference, something we do not have very many of. And when about a year ago, when Wayne Mullins did the research and discovered like the great story about behind that, being just on a list, I think it's worthy of designation. And my concern is this: while we wait for owners to write their opinions back, they've already established they don't want to be on this list. Plus, it's an area that's zoned for intensification. And this fence is almost 200 years old. And I just feel like instead of being on this municipal register, I think we need to, like, I'm not even talking about the houses where there is value there too. I'm talking about the stone fence and the stone barn. And I'd love to get it off this. I'd like to actually designate it. I don't know how to go about that, or if anyone else feels the same way, but we've mentioned this over a year ago, and part of the fence is leaning against the house right now. Do you know what I mean? I think we need to protect it.
So I'll just
Okay, go
note for
ahead.
you, the chair,
Okay.
that everything on that property is protected under the register. So if any demolition was submitted on the site, we would have a statutory requirement of 60 days to review it and pursue designation. So it is protected, and it is something we will add to the list of properties to pursue designation.
Through you, John. I actually would love to see it have we place more importance on it if possible, and not just be on this list, but actually designate this fence. Because like I said, I know it's protected, but the fence is falling apart, and they're leaning one of the iron fences against the building. It's already showing in disrepair.
So through you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, if I may, this is exactly why a prioritization list is critically important. If it's an area of intensification, there's features other than the house that are very vulnerable. We need to prioritize which properties we want staff to start working on first. So if we can add this for a list at our next committee meeting, we'll sort of do a brain dump. What are all the ideas of the properties that we have using the activity report, any other properties that really warrant designation? And as a committee, what we could do is vote or prioritize and say, these are my absolute top 5 that I think that we need to process immediately. And if we can get concurrence on those, even on the top 3, then we can build that into our work plan for the balance of the year. We just need a priority, right? Because everything is like, well, okay, what about, designating, let's say, the home hardware building? If we as a committee were to consider those 2, which one do we want staff to put their attention to first? So if I may suggest that we add that as an item at our next meeting, and we start prioritizing which ones, and then staff will take that direction and start writing the most important reports for the most vulnerable properties first, and we can proceed in that priority. Does that work?
I think that's a great idea.
Good.
Sorry, John, through you.
Go
One of the
ahead.
other reasons why this building is so important, we don't have a lot of rock, because the rock that we find in Grimsby crumbles easily. And so that's why we don't have a lot of rock, where Ancaster's rock is different kind of rock where we're placed on the lake, right? And so I think even though part of the rock was imported in, I think it's important. So I think that's great. Thank you so much.
Good. Councillor Bothwell, I think you had a question. or comment? You had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment with Antonetta's suggestion that, we look at how we come up with a plan, how to pick homes that we're going to, and Kate mentioned this as well, that we're going to put on the register or for designation. In our binders that we received in section 5, which is the inventory of heritage properties, at the back of that, Appendix C, and Bianca will probably be familiar with this, there's explanatory notes, evaluation system, scoring guidelines, score sheet, that's stated 2006, but it's a whole a scoring sheet as to how to evaluate properties for architecture, age, history, etc. And then it has a scoring page with it. So I'm just going to suggest maybe that we can look at that at our next meeting or whatever as well, when we look at how we're going to do our develop some common scoring mechanism when we're looking at prioritizing somehow. It may be useful, it may not, but it was in our binders as a tool for helping to pick properties when we're eyeballing them. And then the one other question I just quickly had for Bianca was the Young Canada Works Heritage Planning intern. The last, when I asked about this early in 2019, the CAO mentioned that he was not going to be pursuing the intern because he had another option for staffing within planning. And we did not proceed with, at that time it was like 75% paid. And then the government actually recently just upped it to like 95% paid with COVID. So is that still, are we looking at now revisiting that?
So through your chair, we're looking at a series of things. Young Canada Works. We're looking at volunteers who are looking to do co-op placements through their master's programs. We're looking at every opportunity we can because we do need the time to do the research thoroughly. And as I said, this only represents 30% of our current staff's time. So we know we need the help. So we're looking at all mechanisms to bring in resources. Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's relevant, I also have opportunities both with York University and Ryerson historically that they've done co-op placements with me as they go on through their education. So I've reached out to both those institutions, seeing if anybody wants to volunteer with us for co-op credits.
Thank you. Now, through the chair, just to clarify, often those co-op placements, there's either a stipend or there's some financial implication in some cases. And again, as through like Young Canada Works or through the Canadian Heritage, there's a small portion that the municipality is responsible. This still says pending budget approval. Are you looking at immediately putting that in place, or are you looking at pending budget approval for next fiscal?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we do have some gapping dollars for this year. So we'd like to do, if is any monetary implications, we would use the gapping dollars that we have for this year. The other thing is the co-op placement through York University is 200 hours unpaid. There's no financial requirements. There are some WSIB forms that we need to sign, but other than that, there's no financial implications to the town. And there's 2 students that we're working on currently. So those have their 0 budget, but they're 200 hours. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for pushing those forward. I think that's great support for the staff in planning. I know how they're stretched, and in any type of support we can get with this heritage work is much appreciated. Thank you.
Good. Any further questions? Oh, Anne? Can you?
For you, Mr. Chair, can I just comment on the outstanding designation plaques? I know this is slightly off topic and returning, but I think an annual designation plaque presentation night, while I think it's a great idea in the future, like we're in a global pandemic, we've been waiting for, I've been on this committee for years, for quite a few years, and we've been waiting for these plaques for a long time. Councillor Dunstall can't even get himself a plaque. Is there any way we could just move forward and get these plaques out? And moving forward, maybe aiming for 2022, we can start having a plaque presentation night. But in the meantime, just kind of move on with it.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if I can, I appreciate, I understand there's been a long backlog, and I think this is that priority conversation Or should we focus on writing a designation report, or should we focus on some of these other things? And I totally agree that plaques are important. You've been waiting for a long time. One of the conversations that we've had is that maybe we just do a couple to get some out there, but there really is some cost efficiencies when we order a bunch of them all at once. And we also want to celebrate people publicly with council. So that's what the future is. We can talk about again as a committee, which 3 or 4 plaques, and hopefully it's that, maybe not too much more, could we do immediately just for a win, you know? But again, that has to fit into the broader prioritization and work plan that we have. But yeah, happy to add that to our agenda for the next meeting. Which plaques do we want to give out?
Well, and no disrespect, but we've kind of done that. Like we've gone through this a bunch of times. Yeah, no, and how would you know, right? But I feel like we keep pushing it. We've had issues then, like we're going to be heading into another fiscal year really soon, sooner than we probably like. And I just think I hate these just bother me because they're always on the agenda and they're always sitting there. And those of us that have seen this for a while have seen that they just keep getting pushed. And it's like, well, they're important, but it's kind of already done. Like in my opinion, like, I don't know how much work is left, and you could definitely, I'm sure, tell me. But I think it would be good to get it off and get it gone. You know, like the budget's been approved. We've gone through the process. We've proofread them. Like, let's just kind of move. That's my opinion on that.
Okay, so I will have to learn a little bit more about that. Admittedly, I understand there's 11 plaques that have to get done. And again, I just want to have that priority conversation with you guys. We're happy to do those, but I also want you to realize that maybe a designation report might get pushed out a month. So if the committee is okay with that, we're happy to move that forward. If we can somehow do both or have the students help us out on one, then we'll advance as many projects as we can simultaneously. I just want to manage expectations in terms of what we'll be able to deliver. But I know it's on our list as well as something that we'd like to get done. And it's a really good new celebratory piece to heritage designation that you don't often get when you do this kind of work.
Yeah, because there's a lot left to do on them.
I would have to look into it. I know we had picked a company. We just have many competing priorities, as you can.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm really not. I'm just kind of.
It's definitely something that we can look into, and it just hasn't been high, but it's something I can definitely re-look at for sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't I suggest that we add that as an agenda item to the next one outside of the activity report, and that we provide you with a full update of where those are, what companies we were looking at, and ensure we have concurrence for what was to be stated on the plaques. And then we can figure out what the next steps include and advise the committee of that.
That sounds fair. Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Jordan, I think you had your hand up. I think the rest of the committee have answered. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Chair Dunstall. I just wanted to talk specifically about 270 Main West. Its correct name now is Avonlea, and just the town's website has the wrong information still. We were a delegation back in 2016, the first time to try to correct it. And we were finally successful in April 2019, and we have all the corrected report is attached to the agenda from the Heritage Agenda in 2016, April 16th, 2019, and it's still wrong on the town's website. So I just wondered when that's going to be corrected. I understand that the plaque is on order, but that doesn't really worry me. It's just the fact that the information is wrong still.
We can work with IT to have both those items corrected. So 270 Main Street West, and as well double check that 224 is actually on the designation register and not on the listed property. So we can check both of those. And if corrections are needed, we'll work with IT to get those done.
Great, thank you.
I need to unmute myself. Sorry about that. So I have a motion here to accept the status and activity report. Can I get a first and second? Olia and Anne. And that be resolved that the updated status and activity report be received. All in favor? Thank you. It's carried. And we have some correspondence. It's relating to the LPAT concerning 133 Main Street East, if I got the right address there, I believe, or 33, is it 33? The Burgess property. And so everybody had a chance to see it. It's just it's more of an information session, I understand. It's not a, it's not the formal hearing. Did you want to just address that, Bianca? Bianca wants to address it, and then I'll take your question. Olia, thank you.
Yeah, so through you, the chair, if you look on the second page, actually the bottom of the first page, bottom of the second page, and then the third page, it basically tells you what the preliminary meeting will be about. They'll be looking for identification of participants, identification of issues, start date of the hearing, duration of the hearing. It's more of an information. It's not the actual hearing.
Thank you. Olia, you had a comment or question?
Just a question. This, I was trying to read through this, I guess, information piece, and I'm not sure that the whole document is complete, because in a couple of spots, it looked like it was starting mid-sentence at the top of a page that didn't seem to flow from the page before it. So I'm just wondering if this is the complete document we were supposed to have attached in the agenda. Because parts of it look like, you know, page 167 to 77, those don't look like to be a continuation of one to the next, same as 168 to the following. There's a few spots like that. So I just wasn't sure if the whole thing is complete. And then I had another question. So Bianca, you're saying this is, can you just clarify again, what exactly will be happening at 9 a.m. on Thursday, October the 29th? Not the hearing, but like a pre-thing?
The chair. So yes, this is the document that was mailed to the chair of the Heritage Committee. So we can follow up with the tribunal to see if some information was missing. And this is a kind of like a preliminary meeting where they're going to be identifying participants. All the things that they're going to be doing is listed on the second and third page. And it'll basically be talking about components of the hearing, but it's not the official hearing. And we'll receive correspondence for that as well once it comes in, and we'll circulate it.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bothwell, you have your hand up. I'm looking on the screen. You don't have your hand up, so I forget to look. Go ahead, Councillor Bothwell. Thank you.
Is it possible, Bianca, that it's just double-sided and it's not scanned, or it is weird? Yeah, it's just so will you send out a complete package and repost it then when you get it?
Yeah,
again, this is what came in the mail from the tribunal, so we can contact them and ask for the missing information, and then I will circulate it.
Thank you. So I have a motion to receive this correspondence. Do I have a first and a seconder? I'm looking out in, thanks, Anne. And Councillor Bothwell. So be it resolved that the correspondence, Local Planning Appeal Tribunal be received. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We're on to new business. Oh, before we go into new business, just a minute. Oh, I need to bring that up before any other new business. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay. Yes. I have before me a notice of motion that was sent out today. And if I'll read it out first and then no, I don't. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to read it out and then I'm going to, yeah. Okay, this notice of motion was submitted by Councillor Bothwell. And whereas section 40.1 of the Ontario Heritage Act 1990 0.18 authorized the council of a municipality to undertake a study of any area of the municipality for the purpose of designating one or more heritage conservation districts. And whereas on February 18th, 2020, Council of the Town of Grimsby approved the Main Street East Council Heritage Landscape or Heritage Conservation District Study in its 2020 budget. And whereas the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee provided Council with advice on identifying, conserving, and promoting heritage within the town of Grimsby. And whereas the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee deemed it desirable and expedient to initiate a Heritage Conservation District study. Now therefore be it resolved that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee formally submit to the Committee of the Whole the attached draft bylaw recommended for approval designating the Main Street East Heritage Conservation District study area in accordance with section 40.1 of the Heritage Act, and that the attached draft bylaw be circulated to staff for comments to be considered concurrently by the Committee of the Whole in consideration of the committee's recommendations. I acknowledge that this will be addressed at the next meeting. Thank you. Any other new business? Councillor Bothwell, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to request to suspend the rules and to deal with this motion immediately at this meeting. I know it requires 2/3 to suspend the rules in order to bring it forward.
Well, so you're asking us to suspend the rules on a notice of motion that was sent in today, and we've delayed this Heritage Advisory Committee meeting, I think, 2 months now. You've had lots of time to do this. I find it somewhat irregular that you would want to suspend the rules at this point in time. I think it's somewhat out of order. I think that this committee is not experienced at suspending rules. They're volunteers. We're not a council. And I find this very irregular. And I'm looking at the clerk to see if this is appropriate at this point in time to go ahead with suspending the rules.
Chair Dunstall, just
Yes.
to let you know that the reason it's being brought forward on short notice is because I was expecting to see something on the Heritage agenda on the Main Street East study, considering it was on the bring forward for Q4. Our next meeting isn't until November. We're nearing the end of Q4, and there's been absolutely no discussion with the Heritage Committee on the Main Street East study. So for the Heritage Conservation District. So with that gap, I felt it expedient and prudent that we get this moving because it had been committed to in Q4 and we're at the end of Q4. So
yeah, and I understand what you're saying. And I also understand that we have already heard from the committee that we can't even get the plaques forward. And the issue is we're short-staffed, 50%.
I believe I have the right to request to waive the procedural bylaw, suspend the rules, as we follow all of the rules of the PBL for council as well, which is so that this motion can be discussed and heard this evening, and requiring 2/3 of the committee to vote to hear it. So I would respectfully ask that those rules apply.
Yeah, I'm going to turn to the clerk so she can speak on this matter.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Usually under procedural bylaw to suspend the rules for the notice of motion, in section 7, it says where it is deemed necessary to not delay the consideration, then the notice of motion may be considered immediately, right? So I turn over to the chair whether you rule that it is deemed necessary to not delay the consideration.
Okay, I'm unmuted. And at this time, I think it's prudent that we proceed to do as I said in the beginning, that this will be heard at the next meeting. And that's fine. Okay. Sorry. Oh, Olia, go ahead, Olia.
Yes, Chair Dunsell, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Can you help me understand, or maybe it's a question for Ms. Kim. Can you just reread that wording again about creating, like, I don't remember the exact wording, was something about delay to decision. Like, what exactly is meant by that phrase? And also, I mean, we've had long meetings before, and I mean, I personally wouldn't have a problem discussing this. I just want to understand a little bit better what that clause was saying.
Would you like to? Yeah, go ahead.
You, Mr. Chair. It states where it is deemed necessary to not delay the consideration. Usually that's more a clause for emergencies where it's necessary to address at this meeting instead of waiting to the next meeting, because usually through a notice of motion is really to be able to give staff time to bring back a report and provide a recommendation to the committee. So with this matter, I think Antonia can speak further to it, but there is a report that staff are looking to bring to council to get some more clarification. So can Antonia maybe speak a little bit more on that, just to provide some information?
Sure. So through you, Mr. Chair, staff has actually drafted a report to bring to council seeking clarification on the original motion, in particular because it says, and whereas on February 18th, 2020, Council of the Town of Grimsby approved the Main Street East Cultural Heritage Landscape or Heritage Conservation District study. So those are two different things, and they require different processes to follow. So we are currently writing a report to seek clarification from council which one we are to proceed with as part of this motion. So that's the clarity from a staff perspective, what we're working on.
So as the chair of this committee, I think it is wise to move this to the next meeting. There's no emergency. Yes, it's part of the fourth quarter. November's still part of the fourth quarter if it were to come up at our next advisory committee meeting. But I think at this time, there has to be some work done on it, as has been mentioned by our Director of Planning. So I will have the clerks put this on our next agenda. Is there any other new business? Oh, we have another question.
So Chair Dunsell, just before you close the door on that conversation, and I will bring up some new business, I would like to go on record to say that, you know, I mean, heritage is never an emergency when it's being compared against a burning building or a baby screaming in a hospital, right? But heritage is always at the bottom of the list because there's always something more urgent. And the fact of the matter is that we've been, as a committee, trying to advance the now 5-year-old 2015 cultural heritage landscape work that's been done and actually put some teeth into it. And we made some progress. And then there was a nice tennis game by council trying to misconstrue words about districts and other types of studies that provide less protection. And frankly, this just seems to be another way to create another gap to not deliver on something that we are, as a committee are mandated to do for the council. I respect your decision. Of course, you're the chair, but I would like to go on record to say that I don't really understand the need for delaying this. And sure, it's not an emergency when you compare it against the examples I cited earlier, but frankly, we've had long meetings before, and I don't see why we couldn't discuss this evening.
Oh, good, I'm unmuted. As our Director of Planning has already said, there's discrepancies in that we don't know which report that council has approved. They need to do some work. We don't have all the information tonight, and I don't think that having a long discussion about something that will be turned back over to staff to give us more information is necessary to start having a discussion about it tonight. It can wait till next meeting. So
Chair,
I understand. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Bothwell.
I believe I have the right to appeal the ruling of the chair, and perhaps the clerk can explain that to members.
Go ahead, clerk. Can you explain to the chair about a committee member appealing a chair's decision? Go ahead, Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the chair has made a ruling. So if there is an appeal by a member, then there will be a vote. Vote will be taken as to whether upheld the chair's decision or not.
So members, you will have, the chair will do a vote where members of the committee can decide whether they agree, which will be a yay, or they don't agree, which will be a nay. Is that correct? With the chair saying.
Just to clarify, the chair has stated that the notice of motion is to be presented at the next meeting. So if you agree with that ruling, then you would say yes. If you don't agree with it, it would be a no.
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Are you putting, oh, sorry, you're putting in.
Can I take a question? Can I place a question before the vote?
Sure.
Just to clarify?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So if the recommendation by the chair was to discuss this matter at the next meeting, and if that's what we're being asked to vote on, and if that is defeated, does that mean we're not planning to discuss this again, or we will revert back to discussing it this evening right now?
We would be discussing it this evening.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, yeah. Somebody else? Yes, Councillor Ritchie has a question. Go ahead, Councillor Ritchie.
To you, Mr. Chair. I'm just sitting here watching, and I heard our Director of Planning state that there's two differences between a heritage culture study and a heritage culture district. And the motion that I hear brought forward right now is for specifically a heritage cultural district. And I don't know how this committee has authorization to direct staff to work concurrently until it goes to the council. As no committee has, even individual councilors do not have the ability to direct staff to work on something unless it's provided by council. So I'm very curious as to how this is playing out, because you know, they don't. This committee, in my opinion, doesn't have the authorization, one, to determine that it's a heritage cultural district, and two, to direct staff.
Thank you for your comments. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Bothwell?
So I think we need to vote on the ruling of the chair, and then do we need 2/3 to suspend the rules to hear it? And I believe that the motion is as presented by myself, needs to be reviewed by the committee. The committee has the jurisdiction to bring this motion forward.
Can I clarify?
Yes. More clarification from the clerk.
To you, Mr. Chair. So first, we'll be voting on the appeal. And then once if that appeal goes through and the decision of the chair is overruled, then we will be voting on waiving the procedural bylaw to allow the notice of motion to be addressed tonight, and that would require a 2/3 majority.
So let's vote on the appeal first, of course. And it is a recorded vote, and I'll let the clerk do the recording of the vote. In a recorded vote, the chair will vote also? Yes. So.
So I'll just go in the order that I see. Kate?
No.
Councillor Bothwell?
No.
Olia?
Can you please read what it is
Sorry.
that we're voting on?
Sorry, the chair will
Yes.
read.
Yeah. Okay. Be it resolved that the ruling of the chair in regard to waiving the notice of motion be upheld.
Can you repeat that, please?
Be it resolved that the ruling of the chair in regards to waiving the notice of motion be upheld.
No.
And there may be some technical,
Have we lost Anne?
Anne's been having issues tonight with being bumped out and losing sound.
Okay, so I'll turn to Mayor.
No.
He's the next official member, so he does, yeah. And Chair Dunstall?
Yes.
So the ruling has been overruled.
Yeah.
So we'll be voting on waiving the rules to discuss this notice of motion tonight, and that will require 2/3. If you can just give me a second to write the resolution.
Okay. Be it resolved that the rules of procedure under section 7.77 be waived to introduce the notice of motion immediately. I need a first and a seconder. Okay, Olia and Councillor Bothwell.
I need to remove in a second for this.
Sorry.
I need to remove in a second.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we need a mover and a seconder for the other motion. When, yeah, Olia. And one more. Yeah, take two. Okay. Yeah, this is, yeah, recorded vote.
8.
Yes.
Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Olia,
Can I just get a repeat, please, on the reading?
Sure. So be it resolved that the rules of procedure under section 7.7, subsection 7, be waived to introduce the notice of motion immediately.
Yes.
Anne,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
Chair Dunstall.
No.
So that's carried.
Okay. So Councillor Bothwell, would you like to speak on this? It's your motion.
Thank you, Chair. So this motion is coming as a result of one of the key priorities that this committee so far in this term has determined is very important. And the fact that it's coming forward as a heritage conservation district is because that is going to give it the greatest and most protection for this area, which is currently under siege with development. And as our planning director noted, we need to make it a priority for areas that we know we need to protect and that are under threat, as she stated. So this motion gives us not only the ability to better put in those protections, but it also allows us to develop the guidelines and the structure that we need for this very important area to Grimsby in our heritage history. It comprises a number of CHLs already, so the intent of it is to strengthen something. CHLs don't give the protection that an HCD does. And it combines the CHLs that we have from 2015 into this Heritage Conservation District study. This motion is only a recommendation at this point. It's not saying that we're defining everything and we're setting out all the terms. It's just recommending to the Committee of the Whole that the draft be considered. It's where the committee is recommending it, but it be considered to designate the Main Street East Heritage Conservation District study in accordance with section 40.1, and that the draft bylaw be circulated to staff. The intention is that staff look at it for comments to be considered, while concurrently the Committee of the Whole can consider it. So this motion is only being put forward to take action on what this council has decided is a strategic priority, is important to it, and is in the budget, has been delayed now since for almost a year. So it's important that we get moving on this, and this is the first step in that process, is to get it into staff's hands, the bylaw, to get the Committee of the Whole looking at it, and certainly to come back with comments and recommendations based on this draft. So the intent is to get it in the hands of, like I said, staff and Committee of the Whole. It's not an ironclad saying this is what we're going to do at this point. It's a recommendation. So I'm strongly asking that I'm hopeful that our committee will support moving this forward to staff and to Committee of the Whole for their comments and get this process moving. As Olia has also mentioned, we've been waiting to get this going, and it's very important to our community. Thank you.
Any other questions? Olia?
This is maybe just a question. I'm not sure. Is it through you, Councillor Dunstall or Chair Dunstall? I didn't have a chance to check this against the Grimsby Beach interim control bylaw, but this kind of comes to mind. And would this kind of put similar parameters in place over Main Street East that I think council placed with the interim control bylaw over Grimsby Beach while they're doing that land use study?
Can we refer that to Antonetta? Would you like to answer that question for me? Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Dunstall, essentially, yes, it would be doing it under the Ontario Heritage Act. Once you start a district study and you declare that and the council passes the bylaw, then there's 1 year where any new construction or demolition cannot take place. I believe, if I read the motion correctly, there were also clauses that would remove the hospital from that exception, as well as some other properties that had already had approval from council to proceed. But it's construction and demolition, I believe, and it wouldn't be the processing of other applications. It would just be construction and demolition. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so to me, it sounds similar to what's in place already at the Grimsby Beach, right, for the land use study.
Yes, essentially, instead of the interim control bylaw, you use the Ontario Heritage Act and the district study, and that gives you the 1 year, but it's not through an interim control bylaw. It's through declaring it a district study area and the bylaw that's passed with that. So it's a different tool in the toolkit, but essentially offers the same type of protection.
Thank you for that clarification.
Let me throw a question out then. Can this be appealed by anybody that comes forward with something that they want to do during that period of time? Has it got teeth is what I'm asking.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think this is why staff want to provide a detailed report. Sorry, can you mute yourself? Yeah. In terms of what levels of protection it does and does not offer. And we want the time to do that thoroughly for council and the board as well. Once the district to actually bring in place a Heritage Conservation District bylaw, that bylaw can be appealed by homeowners in the district, by people outside the district. Typically, there's a high level of owner concurrence that has to happen for a Heritage Conservation District to come into place. But like I said, it doesn't stop the processing of applications that would come. It just stops the demolition and the removal of any structures that are there, as well as any new construction from beginning in the 1 year period from the passing of the bylaw, I believe.
Thank you. Any other questions? If there's no, do we have a motion then to accept this? That would be the motion there. Yeah, let me read the motion again. And whereas Section 40.1 of the Ontario Heritage Act, RSO 1990-01B, authorizes the council of a municipality. I'm gonna need a drink, just a sec here. Getting very dry. Thank you. Whereas Section 40.1 of the Ontario Heritage Act, RSO 1990-C0.18, authorizes the council of a municipality to undertake a study of any area of the municipality for the purpose of designating one or more heritage conservation districts. And whereas on February 18th, 2020, Council of the Town of Grimsby approved the Main Street East Cultural Heritage Landscape or Heritage Conservation District Study in its 2020 budget. And whereas the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee provides council with advice on identifying, preserving, and promoting heritage within the Town of Grimsby. And whereas the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee deems it desirable and expedient to initiate a heritage conservation district study. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee formally submits to the Committee of the Whole the attached draft bylaw recommended for approval, designating the Main Street East Heritage Conservation District study area in accordance with Section 40.1 of the Heritage Act, and that the attached draft bylaw be circulated to staff for comments to be considered concurrently by the Committee of the Whole in consideration of this committee's recommendations. And so I would suggest a recorded vote. Oh, it's a motion, so we need a first and seconder. Let's get a first and seconder. Council Boswell. And second, is that Kate? Yeah, okay, Kate. And
Kate?
recorded votes.
Kate?
Yes?
Yes. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Olia?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Chair Dunstall?
No.
That's carried.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, you have other new business you said you wanted to bring forward?
A couple of follow-up points from our last minutes. Maybe they can be added to the status and activity report, because I think there was a couple of things that were requested in those minutes that come back to Heritage that we have not as yet seen. One of them was a request made by the committee to have staff get a quote from Mr. Letourneau's consulting company to investigate the merits of adding curtilage to the designation report for 122 Main Street East. I'm not sure if that reaching out has happened and if a quote was received, but if it wasn't, if we could just add it to the status and activity report. That's one point. My second point was with regards to, sorry, bear with me here. The property at 242 Main Street East from the previous minutes as well. There was a resolution or request that prior to the demolition of the old porch, that the exposed home with the photographic recording and evidence and all that kind of stuff be provided to staff, and then copies provided to Heritage. So we have not seen that as yet either. Don't know if it's been received by staff, but if it has not, if we could add that to the status and activity report as well. And then the last items for new business that I wanted to bring up. I had a question outstanding with Walter Basic from end of July with regards to for the the benefit of the committee, for us to understand the criteria that staff evaluate when determining whether or not to bring a development application before the Heritage Advisory Committee. Because I had noted 352 Main West, which has recently seen some activity, had not come to committee, but was directly across the street from a designated property and was on along the CHL Highway 8, Main Street West. Whereas other two developments last year had come to committee, those being 299 Main West, which was some distance from a heritage property, but also along the CHL, and One Lakeside Drive, which ultimately I don't believe that development's even taking place. But I just wanted to get a better appreciation, understanding for what the rubrics and criteria are that staff go through when they are evaluating development applications to bring before committee, because I couldn't see the difference between those three scenarios. I just had that question outstanding that I wanted to bring up. And I think that was it. Yeah, everything else has been covered.
Thank you. So staff has got that information and it's duly noted. Any other new business that any member would like to bring forward? Seeing none, I'd like to adjourn this meeting, but I will say our next meeting is, do we have it somewhere? We don't. When's our next meeting? The first Tuesday of November? We're just looking it up. At 6 o'clock? It's the 3rd of November? Yeah, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Night, everyone.
Good night.